Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. Today I want to comment on the California wildfire situation and the importance of having an evacuation plan. This day and age, if you live near a forested region, you absolutely need an evacuation plan. Now, as many of you know, fires are burning around LA, and of course many people are without power as they're doing these preventative power shutdowns to prevent the spread of more fires. Currently, parts of Southern California are experiencing very strong winds, which are, of course, accelerating these fires, causing them to spread much faster and be more destructive. But the primary purpose of this video is to talk about the importance of having an evacuation plan, especially if you find yourself living along the fault lines, particularly in one of these wildfire-prone regions. And wildfires are but one of many meteorological anomalies that can occur. You have things like flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, ice storms. In these types of circumstances, your only option may be to get out of Dodge. You're much more likely going to find yourself in an evacuation scenario than a bug-out scenario. I don't use those two terms interchangeably. I define a bug-out scenario as one in which there's a high probability that you're not going to be able to return to your home and that the disaster is not localized. Now, with the far more likely evacuation scenario, it's imperative that you have a plan of action in place because your home could potentially be destroyed. And you're going to want to make sure that you take as many of the things that you're going to need to rebuild your life. Now, with most evacuation orders, you're going to have some time to prepare. It may be minutes, it may be hours, it may even be days in the case of hurricanes. So it really boils down to what are the potential weather disasters which are likely to affect your region. In the case of wildfires, you may only have minutes, never mind hours, to get your stuff ready and get out of Dodge. And of course, the longer you wait, the more congested the roads are going to be. So this is why it's so important to not only have a plan, but to maybe even run a few drills prior to an SHTF evac situation. So there's certain things you can do long before something happens to protect yourself. One of the first things you should do is have some sort of inventory of what you have in your home. This is obviously going to come in handy for insurance purposes, and make sure you have ample amounts of insurance to cover the stuff that you have on your property. Ideally, if you're of the practical preparedness mindset, you'll have a fire safe that contains all your important documentation as it pertains to things like insurance, social security, employment, wills, deeds to any properties that you own, any financial information related to stocks, bonds, of course, identification like birth certificates, marriage certificates, and passports. And of course, if you are evacuating, bring those things with you, even if you do have a fire safe. Now, assuming you have a vehicle, which if you live in one of these high-risk regions, you should, then you're going to want to take your computers, hard drives, for something so relatively small that contains all of the essential details of your life. Packing your personal computer system, not necessarily the monitor, but just the hard drive, makes perfect sense if you have the time and the means to do so. In addition to that, of course, you're going to want to take all your keepsakes, pictures, sentimental items. Now, in terms of preparedness provisions, you might think that just because it's a local disaster, that you're just going to go to a hotel. But just consider if, say, 200,000 people are forced to evacuate from an area, which is a conservative estimate if we're talking about a large urban center. 200,000 people are all now refugees, and they're all seeking hotels. I mean, there was a tweet by LeBron James who was complaining because he was driving around for hours after this Los Angeles fire here yesterday because he couldn't find a hotel room. Obviously, that's going to be the case because there simply are not enough hotel rooms to accommodate that many people at once. And if there's 200,000 people and a high percentage of them are going to be seeking accommodation, sure, some will be going and staying with family, but most are going to be seeking a hotel. You may have to travel very far. I'm talking hundreds, if not 1,000 miles to find a hotel to stay in. And I'm assuming if you watch this channel, you're probably trying to avoid government shelters. So there is a very good chance that a valid option for you might be to set up camp somewhere outside. And as such, you're going to need all of the standard camping supplies. So for some people, your camping gear, insofar as that overlaps with your bug out kit and your survival bags, it would be worthwhile to have all that stuff at the ready at a moment's notice, just in case you had to throw it in your vehicle. Hopefully you're driving a truck, and hopefully you're keeping that vehicle topped off with gasoline to the best of your ability, especially in wintertime when you may need that vehicle to keep you warm. It should go without saying that you're going to want to have several days worth of food. For an evacuation situation, MREs would probably be ideal, because remember, they're made to be eaten on the road. Freeze-dried food is great and it still will work, but MREs have everything you need contained within the MRE. And I can't even believe that I'm saying this, because I personally hate MREs. I think they're disgusting, most of them, when compared to all of the freeze-dried options that are out there. Personally, for an evac situation, I would split my provisions between MREs and freeze-dried food, because freeze-dried food, of course, you'll want to cook it, so that means you're going to need a means to cook it. Now, you don't have to cook it necessarily. You can just add water and eat it cold, but most people are not going to want to do that. Now, I've reviewed items here on the channel before, like the Emergency Essentials Insta-Heater system. I'll post a link to that video in the description. And basically, it's a no mess, no fuss. You don't need any fuel source or anything like that. It uses the same technology that are in MREs to rapidly warm up and cook your food. You're going to want to bring your prescription medication. You're going to want to bring ample clothing, personal hygiene products for at least 7 days. If you have pets, obviously you're going to want to bring enough food for your pets. You're definitely going to want to bring some comfort items if you do have children, because that's going to be a very stressful experience for them. And of course, you're going to want to bring some personal protective equipment, because not all those 200,000 people who are evacuating are going to be law-abiding citizens. Now, it should go without saying that you should also have a man-portable bug-out bag system that you bring with you when you're evacuating a region, in such case that your vehicle became gridlocked and you had to escape a region by foot. In that case, you're going to have to abandon a lot of the stuff that you evacuated with, but at least you'll have the bare essentials that you need to survive. Now, many preppers have what's called a bug-in mentality, meaning that they're going to ride out any disaster at all costs. Well, obviously, in the case of these weather disasters, that could be a catastrophic decision. So if you are concerned about your preps being destroyed, another strategy, of course, would be caching supplies away from your primary location. I plan on doing a more in-depth video on caching in the future. In conducting your evacuation drills with family members and loved ones, you're going to want to make sure that you have some sort of rendezvous point or multiple rendezvous points in places where there's a very low probability that they're going to be compromised by whatever disaster that you're anticipating. And because most people work between 40 to 60 hours a week and an additional potential 2 hours of commuting, based on those odds, there's a 25 to 40% chance, we'll say, that if SHTF is going to happen, it's going to happen while you're at work, and it's going to happen while you're separated from your family. So it's very important that you have some sort of rendezvous plan, not only one rendezvous point, but multiple rendezvous points, because if there is a power outage within the region, and cell towers don't have electricity, you're not going to be able to make calls to communicate as to where to meet. Now, if you don't have a rendezvous point and you have to leave your home, you're going to want to leave a note on your home indicating where you went and where they should meet you. Now, obviously, if you're worried about looters, this is just par for the course. It should go without saying that if you can, take as many of your valuable items as you possibly can that are small and packable. Obviously, you're not going to be hauling your 50-inch Ultra HD television set, but if you do have things like jewelry or precious metals, that's something you're going to want to bring to minimize the loss due to looting or to the disaster itself. Another thing you're going to want to consider is to think outside the box in making an evacuation plan. In a lot of these communities, particularly in California and many of the mountainous regions, access to certain communities is very limited. So there's usually one way in and one way out. There's not a lot of options for back roads like where I live, where there's just countless grid roads and there's 50 ways out of town. But it's important to be aware of any possible alternative routes that are off the beaten path and won't force you into the congested main veins. Now, those major roadways, however, in spite of the fact that they're congested, they may still be the fastest and safest way out. So it's really up to you to do your research beforehand and confirm whether or not an alternate route is going to be a safe bet. Remember that when people are in a panic, the tendency is going to be to do what they've done 1,000 times before. And most people are instinctively drawn to crowd onto those major roadways, which they take to work every day. But that doesn't mean that that's the fastest, most expedient way to get out of Dodge. That just means that when conditions are good and all is functioning, it's the best way, but not necessarily in the case of an evacuation gridlock situation. Another thing to keep in mind is that within these situations, people may be driving more aggressively, so you have to drive defensively, drive safely, but just be mindful of the fact that other people may be in a panic state and they may be trying to get out of Dodge. I mean, you see these images of people driving down these fiery roadways, and all it takes is one panicked person to make a critical mistake, which could potentially lead to a pileup or a gridlock situation, which of course could put the lives of other people in grave danger if they're trying to evacuate a fire zone. So like I said, a lot of this is dependent on having a vehicle. Personally, if I lived near a forested region, it's a double-edged sword. Yes, you can enjoy the wilderness, you can live an off-grid lifestyle, but with that comes the hazard of forest fires, which are becoming more frequent, more intense, and just more dangerous as we encroach on the environment or the environment encroaches on us. Whichever way you want to slice it, that's the case nowadays, and you got to be prepared for it. The most valuable thing that you have to preserve is your life and the life of your family members. Letting go is going to be challenging for some people, but it's something that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to be capable of letting go of all of your worldly possessions in an instant in one of these evacuation situations. And at the end of the day, that's what your insurance is for, and out of the ashes, you can build anew. Let me know in the comments section if you have any personal experiences with evacuation and different tips that you might have that would be useful to people in a stressful situation like this. Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoy the video, Canadian Prepper out. The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up through CanadianPreparedness.com. We've totally revised our website. We only deal with quality products at the best prices, and all of my subscribers get a VIP discount of 10% off the entire store. Use discount code SURVIVALPREPPER for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive and the prepared thrive. See you next time.